Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new video where we are going to go over my top 5 tips for my absolute favorite champion. I am excited for this video. I am excited to talk about my favorite champion. This is the first 5 tips video that I'm covering a champion for the second time because he is extremely strong in the support role. Hell, he's strong in ADC, he's strong in support, he's strong in mid, he can play top, he can do it all. I absolutely love Veigar. Now, this account completely this season is a huge amount of my games was just playing Veigar. I'd say about 80% of those games were playing support, so I have a really good understanding of this champion, and I really want to give you guys a strong pick that you can pick up in the support lane and can really punish very particular champions that are going to be in this current meta. He is strong against Yuumi, he is strong against Soraka, he is strong against a lot of enchanters and tanks. He might struggle against certain champions like Lux and Vel'Koz and Brand that might outrange you and do a little bit more damage, so you have to be careful of those. So I put timestamps every single point in my video. At the top, there's going to be a skip this intro. At every single point, there's also going to be a skip to the next tip, as well as the bar is going to be segmented for scrolling, and just make sure you can check that out, and it will pinpoint the exact timing that the next tip will come up. If you want to contact me directly with any questions, I'm going to pin my Discord as well as my Twitch channel and my Patreon if you want to become a patron and support the channel. Finally, if you want to add your own tips, really love doing this. I under the strict assumption that I don't think anyone is a perfect player in League or knows everything about every champion. So anytime someone shares something special with me that I did not know about Veigar, I am just through the roof. So please let me know if there's any cool Veigar tips that you have, and I would love to see them in the comments down below. So with all that out of the way, let's jump into tip number 1. Okay, and getting into tip number 1, this one's going to be a quick one. We're just going to cover my pick for the best runes as well as the starting item for Veigar support. Now, there's a couple different ways you can look to play this, but this is my overall around best flex pick. Now, I do change my runes up based on my different matchups, but this is a pretty good catch-all rune setup you can do when you're looking to try out Veigar in the support lane. Now, Glacial Augment is going to be an extremely strong and is going to be a must when playing Veigar support and you're just really starting out. Now, this is really going to provide you with a crap ton of CC. It's going to enable you to get event horizons from longer away. It's going to increase the overall accuracy of your Q and W by just setting them up with a really basic Glacial Augment auto coming in. Now, being a support, you're a bit limited with resources, so Magical Footwear is a great pickup there. And with Biscuit Delivery, it is just going to provide you with a little bit more sustain as you are squishy in lane. Basic CDR Cosmic Insight rune is going to be great for stacking. Is going to be great for getting as many spells off in as possible. Now, this one might be a little bit different, but Presence of Mind is just so rewarding when playing it. You don't really realize it when you're playing it, but when you're playing without Presence of Mind, it gets very annoying, particularly if you're only going 1 mana item in the GLP. You can run out of mana in those team fights, particularly when playing against a lot of tanks. And finally, I like Coup de Grace because it just enables you to have that little bit more execute power when playing Veigar. The basic way that I max out my spells is you want to do Q into E into W. You can put 2 points into W and then max out E is usually the best way to do it if you are consistently looking to one-shot the backline minions with your WQ. Now, the starting support item really comes down to your ability to stack with the Relic Shield. Is just so nice. But with the recent buffs in the Spells Thief's Edge, and if you're looking to play in a hyper aggressive lane, say you're playing with something like a Draven, which is one of my favorite lanes with Veigar, and you're just looking to cause as much damage, that can work. But overall, particularly against Ignite lanes, Relic Shield is going to be the best because it's going to provide you with that little bit more HP to survive all ends. Other lanes that you would really want to take the Relic Shield over this one would be lanes that have a lot of all-in potential, like Leona, like Nautilus, like Blitzcrank, like Thresh. Just having that little bit more of safety on the Relic Shield can be very nice. If you're looking to just consistently do a little bit more damage, you're not really too concerned with stacking, you're throwing all your abilities at your enemies, like maybe something like a Soraka or a Yuumi or an Enchanter lane, the Spell Thief's Edge can be a very strong pick if you feel comfortable in the lane. But again, if you're just starting off with Veigar, Veigar support, just make it as forgiving and easy of a lane as possible, and that is what the Relic Shield is going to do. Now, another important thing with your base runes, I think it is extremely important that you get the base rune with the CDR on the top lane, or the top line, one of the adaptive force, and then extra armor. If you didn't know, Veigar recently got a buff to his magic resistance, so he's going to be a little bit tankier against those support and the AP damage coming out of your AD. So getting as much armor, because you are going to take a few auto attacks in the all-ins, is going to be very important. So CDR, AP, and then armor are going to be your runes, and that will wrap up tip number 1 and the basic setup for Veigar support. Alright, and getting into tip number 2 with Veigar, this is going to increase your overall accuracy with landing abilities and getting more catches in lane by using these kind of small tricks that I've developed over a long time of playing this. These are just some basic trading patterns that I use. So, people really like to punish and deal damage to Veigar when they know he is weak, and that is perceived when he is at a very low level in the early laning phase. How you can look to take advantage of this very common thing is to look to abuse the bush and do range auto attacks on an enemy, getting the slow proc on them, and then feigning a retreat while throwing your abilities behind yourself and really giving them the choice of taking the damage and maybe looking for some follow-up, or to just run the other way and just let you get off free auto attacks. This is going to be extremely good to use against and really frustrating against melee champions, particularly in low levels when they don't have their full combo. I usually get, even in Diamond, I can get 5 to 6 auto attacks on a Leona that only has one ability as enabled to E and Q on me. So always look to harass people in windows where they are in a very poor spot. So this would be something like a Blitzcrank with this hook down when they have very low threat. This is when you can look for this very basic trading pattern. And for some reason, when you're playing Veigar, it's like Kassadin in the early game. People love to try punishing it because they know you are so insanely strong in the late game. So always look just for a basic auto attack. And then when they look to punish you back, you just throw your abilities behind you. Now, if they're hyper aggressive, maybe something like a Draven or a Leona, you can stagger the W to be a little bit in front of them. But you're taking advantage of their, you are predicting that they're going to step forward, and that is going to be where you can punish them. And it's going to be very hard for them to dodge it with the Glacial Augment auto attack debuff that is going to be on it. That just makes your W so much easier to land even without a E procced on them. Speaking of the E, the second part of this tip is just how to land more E's. It's a very basic tip, but it works so well. It's like those really simple basic cons that have been around forever, but they still work, and that is this. Whenever you are looking and playing on Veigar, running straight at people, they know exactly what you're looking to do. You're going to give away your ganks. Never run straight at people when you're looking for your E. You want to be feigning to go up to the bushes to ward that way, and then throwing out your E and getting into a good spot. This will allow you to cut. It will close a little bit of ground by going this way, maybe 2 or 3 Teemos in front, and just getting in a overall better position. So basically what I'm trying to say with this tip is you want to hide your actions and what you are trying to accomplish at all times, because you can get punished extremely heavily when people can get a read on you. So try to be as unreadable as possible. And again, you don't always have to go up this way. You can go this way, maybe feign warding a bush, but the last thing you want to do, what's gonna send off huge red flags to the enemies, if you just run straight at them and look for an E like that. And that will wrap up tip number 2. Okay, and getting into tip number 3, we're going to talk a little bit more about landing your skill shots more accurately with your Q and your W. Now, this is going to be very common, but before you get a read on someone where you find if they're more likely to move left or right or up or down, people always, when they are in a Veigar cage, when they haven't seen how you throw out your abilities yet, they love staying in the absolute middle of your E. So throwing out your Q and W is going to be great, but the extra power that comes out of Glacial Augment is you throwing down your E, they're staying in the middle. Even if they're looking to dodge that Comet, throwing out that W is just going to be a great way to cover as much of the cage as possible with a big amount of damage. Now, reading the situation even further, seeing that, hey, my ADC is running up, his ADC is running away, so he obviously wants to go retreat back to his tower. So staggering the W to be a little bit further to the tower is going to be an extremely efficient way to land more of your W. So again, auto attack, slow debuff, as well as staggering the W to where you want to throw it, on top of knowing that basically people are going to, more likely than not, and that's how we work on our accuracy, just by throwing it to where most people are going to be, and that is in the center of the cage. And as well, this works with your Q. When you have someone caged and they are very little threat to you and you can walk up to them, you want to have an auto attack slow debuff and then throwing out your Q, W, staggering your W to the back of the cage. I hope this helps you out. I try not to go into too complex of things with you and just kind of go over basics and how to increase your overall level. If you have any questions about these, please let me know in the comments down below. He is my absolute favorite thing to talk about when I am talking about League of Legends. Alright, and getting into tip number 4, we're going to cover a couple really small things that I found that really help my overall win rate that I have found, and I love to share with you guys. The first thing, in the late game, you are able to easily steal objectives with your insane power. This is with very, very few passive stacks, and it is all about just getting very, very used to when your W is coming down and letting your Q come out right at a very similar time to look to smite them at the same time. Now, those are some examples of not hitting the target at the same exact time, and that final one where I killed it, both of my abilities landed at the same exact time. So get into a practice tool and just get very used to landing both of the abilities in the same exact frame, and this will allow you to steal more and more of the objectives. You might not get that many, but maybe you steal like 5 out of 100. This is going to help your overall win rate by quite a bit, just getting that overall power coming out of the dragon or the baron. Next step, let's talk about items and figuring out what your team needs. Now, Veigar is an extremely strong champion, I think, because he's very flexible with what he can build for his items. He can be just a pure damage threat if that's what your team needs. Maybe you have a Galio in the mid lane, Maokai up in top lane, and a Gragas coming out of the jungle with a Lucian ADC. That team isn't going to have too much damage, and you should be going just a full on as much damage as possible as you can. But say you have something like a Kayle in the top lane, a Kha'Zix in the jungle, a Syndra in the mid lane, and a Jinx in the bot lane, where you just have a whole ton of damage. What you want to focus on first and foremost is getting maximum amount of CDR, so you can use your E as much as possible in fights. Being on a 6-second cooldown, you can get off 3 to 4 in a fight depending on how long it goes, as well as just getting as much utility as possible. Utility comes from speed ups, slowdowns, and just your overall ability to get picks. Twin Shadows can be very good, GLP is very good, as well as things like Shrelia. If your team is lacking any kind of engage, like that team I was just talking about before with very little hard CC, and you're relied upon to engage for your team, having a mix of Shrelias and Twin Shadows can be great, just so you can set up a team fight to the point where they don't really need too much damage out of you. They just need a good setup for your fight. So fill in the gaps in what your team needs. If they need you to absorb a really big cooldown that keeps getting used on you over and over again, there's a Malphite ult, there's a Fizz ult, there's a Zed ult, because believe you me, you are going to be focused quite heavily in team fights when you are playing Veigar support. People know you're squishy, people know you're a lot of free gold, so you have to be as careful as possible in those high pick situations when playing Veigar. We're going to cover the team fight positioning in the final tip, but that is just my overall basic itemization tips with Veigar. Very, very flexible. Team builds a lot of MR. Obviously, you want to go Void Staff. Going full CDR is going to be a great way to go about it as well. But again, filling in the gaps and the weaknesses of your team is going to be a great way to look to do it. Now, if you have the Leprechaun skin of Veigar and you throw an E from a hidden place where they cannot see you, they will not see the ring wrapping around. It's a bit of a pay to win skin, and I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure they haven't fixed it yet. Next up, Omega Squad Veigar is one of my favorite skins because the W is extremely hard to read, where it just has a small red print. It doesn't have this very loud big purple thing falling out of the sky. It's just a really small missile with a red reticule on the ground that can be easily covered up by a plethora of different abilities that are going to be thrown out in the team fights. Next kind of small tip you always want to look to do with Veigar is when you are taking objectives, you always want to look to engage fights around different choke points. This is going to be where your E, your W, and your Q are going to be 100% effective because you are able to hit multiple targets. You do not want to be fighting in positions where they can easily just walk around your E, as it is your primary. It's your ability that really sets apart the poor Veigars from the extremely good Veigars. So always look to fight in choke points. That's my kind of group of small little tidbits that I've kind of found over the years to really effectively play Veigar at a decent kind of mid-elo range. And that will wrap up this tip. Alright, and getting into the final tip. Tip number 5. What's really a very, very important thing to understand with Veigar is he thrives heavily in front-to-back team fights and really, really strong positioning where you're able to get off several rotations, as well as to protect hyper carries on your team and to really isolate and get picks for your team. So how you want to look to do this is by playing pretty much at this range. You want to look for engagements where the enemy team is going to use abilities on your front line and other enemies. This is particularly true if you feel like you're in an elo that you are better than the average player. You want to use your allies as meatbags, and you always want to be behind your allies and just providing support and punishing people that overextend. There is very, very few champions with better zone punishment and just zone control than Veigar. One that might come to mind are things like Anivia and Cassiopeia, but they do not have the same kind of insane scaling Veigar does. So always look to punish enemies overextensions. This is the easiest way to play. Now, as you get more comfortable, you get more aggressive with Veigar. You have a good understanding of their enemies' abilities, and you're not under too much threat. Maybe you have a Banshee's Veil, maybe you have a Zonia's, maybe you build a little bit tanky. You can always look to engage for your team by throwing out your GLP and combining it with your E, making it very hard to get away from your E. But as you're just first starting out, maybe you're playing against a pretty good mid laner that is playing an assassin pick. You want to be in the back line, and you looking for these front-to-back team fights is going to be a great way to play out Veigar, because in general, you are going to be able to kill the enemy front line before they kill your front line because of the immense amount of damage that's going to be coming out of support that is combined with a very, very execute out of your R. Now, throwing abilities from Fog of War can be an extremely effective way to get more E's off, more Q's off, and landing more just overall abilities by throwing them from unexpected angles, as well as being out of just vision for people to just click on you and slam down something like a Malzahar ult or a Zed ult. So always looking to play around vision is going to be an effective way to do the fights. Final tip for looking to team fight when playing Veigar: you have a big old shotgun. Now, the Q and W are extremely strong in the late game, but you have a very team fighting defining ability. You need to look at the builds and where people are currently in the fight. I think that Veigar is a great champion for people with really good game knowledge, and it doesn't require the best micro in the world to play. So having a good understanding of how much return of the value and the interest that you're going to throw at the enemy, you want to get I worded that a little bit weird, but you want to get as much interest from your investment of throwing out your R. You want to be taking out as much potential value out of the enemy team with your R, because you only get one of these ults during the team fight, unless there's something crazy like a whole bunch of Cloud Drakes and max 45% CDR. But outside of that very, very niche situation, always look to throw out your ultimate at the target that has the most valuable position on the enemy team. And that will wrap up my guide, guys. This has been a really fun video for me to make because I love Veigar support, and I encourage a couple of you guys to pick up the support. If you have any questions for me, again, you can hit me up in the comments down below or check out my Discord. As always, guys, take it easy.